Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where there was a question that I wanted to say, is there a recap of the win total results from last year? Tyler jumped in the tailgate before we got going. And so what I wanted to do to take this time to remind the audience is that when we get done counting them up all the way through all the different conferences, at the end of the tunnel is our win totals locks episode. Right now, I think we're going to pair that with the week 0 locks, since there's 3 week 0 games that we could wager on, right?
Only 3.
We do.
You can wager
week
on every game.
locks. All right.
What? Yeah. Oh yeah, we do week 0 locks every year. Come on, listen. If you don't have
week 0 is pretty bad this year, though, man.
No. On the mothership CBS Sports Network, if you don't have an SMU first half team total over for Rhett Lashley trying to go put it on them boys from the Wolfpack 2 words, then I mean, what are you even doing? But because it's a very, very skinny week 0, and look, we might have money line sprinkles.
Whoa.
We might have money line sprinkles in Dublin.
I already have one. Yes, I have one. Yeah,
I can see it.
So we'll do week 0 locks. We'll do our win totals locks as well. And there we will do the full recap. I was trying to count it up, but we absolutely sprayed the board last year. I've got us all. Let's see. The best wins I would say were Oklahoma State over 6.5. That was a lock unity that we cashed as the Cowboys made it all the way to the Big 12 title game. Let's see. We had some Iowa over 8 that cashed, some Florida State over 9.5 that was a breeze. We had some West Virginia under that was unfortunately a loss, and some Pitt over 7 that missed by a daggum mile. So yeah, it's been pretty busy. Hey, I got a trivia question for you, Danny. Do you know how many former head coaches are currently assistants or analysts, or about to be assistants or analysts for Sonny Dykes TCU staff?
I'm gonna say 3. Is it 3 with Dana Holgorsen added to the mix, right?
Right.
We went over this morning. I should know this. Who are the other 2?
So you know about Captain Wristbands and Britney Spears?
Oh, dude, yeah. Text message the team when you're gone. Todd Graham.
Yeah.
Out from Pitt.
Right, and then
the team. That's number
there were
2.
2 others that were already there. Former head coaches. One of them was in the Mountain West. One of them was multiple places.
Gary Patterson's gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So he's not included on here.
Dana Holgorsen, Todd Graham. Anybody got the answers without looking? Or did y'all look it up? No, Andy Avalos.
I remember that one.
Okay.
Andy Avalos and Ken Wilson.
So Ken Wilson, but I didn't remember Avalos.
Got yourself a rock star crowd there in Fort Worth. But I know what Bud mentioned was that it might be a succession plan. Like if you feel like Kendall Briles is on the way out, let's go ahead and get some people in the building that might be able to hit it. What was the sticking point this morning when y'all were talking about it on the radio?
Oh, so for me, I thought it was, there's a lot of common sense about, I thought you said Bud, my bad. Too many cooks in the kitchen, but I think this is a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience. I think this is the very definition of what the coaching fraternity looks like. Like you take care of your buddies, your boys you've cut your teeth along the way up. Dana Holgorsen and Sonny Dykes I looked this up today. They were both wide receivers coaches at Texas Tech from 2000 to 2004 under Mike Leach. And what I thought was interesting is most schools don't have 2 wide receiving coaches, but that's what both of their bios say, wide receivers. So co-wide receivers coach. So they go way back. And I do, it totally makes sense. Like I remember talking to buddies, you'd play with them on one spot and you reunite with them at another spot. or at different companies. If you work for one company and all of a sudden you have an ability to come back together, it's like, let's bring the band back together. I think this is kind of what you're seeing on this staff.
You know what's kind of crazy on the Todd Graham thing? I was just thinking about this. Like, think about what his reputation is, and think about how ridiculously good his coaching tree is, and how like almost none of the guys who have coached under him have that sort of reputation. I mean, his
because it
coaching tree
includes
is
Norvell, right?
okay.
Mhm.
So Ryan Silverfield, okay, Jake Spavital, who I think for the most part his players like, Mike
Spaz
Norvell,
boys.
Jay Norvell. Like, I mean, a lot of Jay's players from Nevada followed him to Colorado State. So I mean, I assume
Or went
they like
pro.
him.
Mhm.
Right. Billy Napier, Gus Malzahn, Dan Lanning, GJ Kinney, Kenny Dillingham. I mean, like all those guys are kind of like fun loving, and then they're like, oh yeah, you're off the coaching tree. It's just like the opposite.
Some of the meanest drill sergeants produce the best, cores. So
Yeah.
And that sounds like a lesson that Todd Graham would love. That sounds like something that he would gladly pass on to all of his players.
You would think that he'd get an analyst position on one of those guys' staffs, right? But because like a lot of them, have talked about how he was like a bit of a mentor to them or a real influence for them. But that, I don't know, he's going somewhere that's not one of those staffs. Interesting.
Before we hit the music, because we got a lot to get to here with the Big 12 win totals, as we saw from our pacing yesterday. It's sometimes those air raid teams will do an inside receivers coach and an outside receivers coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because you don't need a tight ends coach,
right?
And also,
actually, I would love to be the tight ends coach for an air raid team.
You want a no-show job, dude? Absolutely.
Vibes coordinator.
It's hard to coach receivers in an air raid because you're just like 80% of the time you're like, okay, don't do anything, just stand there and kind of run a little bit.
Well, isn't it? It's like find the open space. Like
no. I mean, like they're only running plays on one side of the field, so they'll tell the receivers on the other half of the field not to run a route.
Yeah, that's true.
And serve their legs.
All right, Danny, I'm gonna ask you, since you missed it, that we were able to still give some of your picks. Are you ready to count them up?
Let's do it.
As much as I think the under is a safe play, like I can't even.
Count them up. Count them up. How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
I can't fathom 8 wins.
How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
I just can't. I don't see it. It's not on there. It's not the schedule I'm looking at. Unless there's another schedule somewhere.
And the schedule that I'm looking at is for the Kansas State Wildcats. Kansas State, right there in the Big 12 title race over the last couple years. Chris Kleiman has established the Wildcats as one of the standard bearers in the Big 12. We enter the Avery Johnson era, one of the most highly regarded quarterback prospects to be signed by Kansas State in the modern era. His hair is amazing. His playmaking might be even better. We pick up Dylan Edwards, his former teammate, out of the transfer portal. We lose some transfer portal stars on the defensive side of the ball, as well as some players to the NFL. NFL losses on the offensive line as well. At FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, the win total set at 9.5, juiced under. Tom, where do we start with Kansas State?
I have them going over, but it is not with what I would consider an extreme level of confidence. I think that, we've talked about it a lot. They weren't exactly shedding tears with Will Howard leaving because they kind of knew the direction they wanted to go with Avery Johnson. I think he has a lot of excitement to him. I still have a lot of questions about him as a passer of the football. You don't really see a ton of, great success in that department when he played last year. But I also think that him combined with the running backs that they have in DJ Giddens and getting Dylan Edwards from Colorado in the portal, I think there could be a lot of fun in that. I think that the offensive line, it's probably going to be fine, but you lose, what's his name? The giant, BB. You lose BB at guard, who was just a massive man mover of a, guard. And I don't know if they have that guy still on the line. He did a lot of work for them in the run game. I don't know. Like, they get Dante Cephas transfers in at receiver. I was big on Cephas when he transferred to Penn State last year, but he was just kind of invisible in that offense. And I don't know if we're going to see a larger impact for him in this offense. You lose Colin Klein to Texas A&M, so you've got, a new coordinator calling the plays. I think defensively they'll be fine. They've always been a team that doesn't really have superstars on that side of the ball, but they're, as a unit, they work well. So I've got them winning 10 games, but like I said, it's just you look at the schedule, they'll kill UT Martin. I think they're going to win at Tulane on the road. You get Arizona at home, you get Oklahoma State at home, you get Kansas at home. Like, that's big. You don't have to play Utah. Your road schedule features Iowa State, which I think is probably your toughest road game. I guess you can argue West Virginia, but Houston, Colorado, like I think experience and coaching wise, I'm willing to give this team the benefit of the doubt a lot. But like my opinion of the Wildcats could change quickly once the season starts.
Ooh.
Oh, it's an early dub.
How do you get the mic mute? Okay. Maybe that's the universe telling me not to bet under, but I am under.
Yeah, it is.
I really trust Chris Kleiman. I'm all about Avery Johnson. I think this is one of the best coached teams in the conference, but I just don't think that they are a top 12-ish power rated football team, which is basically what I would need to rate them at, to have them go over the 9.5, even accounting, for the juice. I think there's, probably 8 or 9 SEC teams that are better. I think there's probably 3 ACC teams that are better, Notre Dame, 4 or 5 Big Ten teams. So I just, in that sort of range where they're more in that 15 to 22 power rating, I have a very hard time going there. And they have so many games where they're slightly more than a touchdown favorite, but not quite 14, to where you can just, if you want to just kind of go win-loss, go and just check off the automatic win. I mean, what should they really beat Oklahoma State? They're not going to be 10 plus to Oklahoma State in Manhattan. That's games probably 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. Games that are absolutely losable, at West Virginia. They're favored. They're not favored by a touchdown on the road. I think all these teams in this conference are very closely clustered together. I'm going to bet with that in mind.
I'm with you on that last statement, Bud. This team, there's going to be some carnage, I think, in this league. I mean, that's been the one thing that they even sold was the competitive balance, which makes it tougher on all of these. When I was going down the schedules, doing, W's or L's, which one's it going to be? And some of them you can go through other conferences and it's just W. Yep, I know for certain that team is this much better. And this one, I didn't have quite as much confidence. I am going 9-3 as well. I think even the Tulane game, going to Yeoman Stadium, is going to be tricky. That's a tough spot to play. I mean, they gave Ole Miss a handful last year too. And I know there's been some turnover, but I still think Tulane could be a tough spot to play. The Colorado, West Virginia back-to-back road games, I think is a really tricky stretch for them. But probably most importantly, and my biggest concern is around Avery Johnson. I mean, he's supposed to be great, and I know they sent Will Howard packing off to Ohio State, but he's still a very young quarterback. Where I think there will be some mistakes made, in crucial situations in tight games. A lot of these one possession games, whether it's a touchdown around there or not, I just think those could come back to get them. So I have them going 9-3 as well.
Yeah, 8 or 9 SEC teams that might be power rated higher. I see 0 on the schedule. 3 ACC teams that might be power rated higher. I see 0 on the schedule. Teams that might be power rated higher in their own conference. I see 0 on the schedule. Mm-hmm. Yes, we go over here. Absolutely. Okay, 0 certified losses. 12-0 is within the realm of possibility here. I'm more at a 10.5 the way that I look at this. It's nice that you get Oklahoma State at home. I do think that's probably your toughest game in general. At Iowa State, I agree, Tom, is the toughest road trip. At West Virginia, it could be, even in the words of James Franklin, an absolute hornet's nest. But look, I'll give them. I think I'll give them all the rest of them. I'm at 8 or 9 W's that I write in on the schedule right here. I like your point about Avery Johnson. Danny, it's already got my wheels turning. Have we had a year where there have been so many second-year quarterbacks where the future or the outlook for a college football team is hinging on them capitalizing on promise, whether it is Kansas State or Oklahoma or Tennessee? I mean, it feels like that's kind of a unique thing in college football. So I'm ready to recognize that, but I'm doing the opposite of what Bud has told you is the smart move, which is like you should be betting to the middle, right? Like in this conference, all the teams at the top, I feel great about, and all the teams at the bottom, I am absolutely burying. And this is one of those examples where a team at the top, I just do think that there's a separation between them and a Colorado, between them and, I mean, Colorado and Houston on the road, but you get Arizona at home. I just don't see where the traps are, again, unless like Avery Johnson gets hurt along the way.
I do think Morgantown, after going to Colorado, is the obvious trap there.
Right.
Like back-to-back roadies there. I also have them, I mean, pretty decidedly better than everybody else in the league, except for Utah. You know, to me, if you're not like a true top 10 power rated team, I have a hard time making you like 10 points better than everybody else.
Yep. All right.
How many games are going to win this fall?
Which is the operative question for Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy has done something, I mean, 1,000 times. He's won 8 or 9 games. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, he's done it maybe thousands of times. He's won 8 or 9 games, maybe thousands of times. The over-under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook is at 8.5. Over at +122. Under at -150. That Danny, we've got a ton back from last year on both sides of the ball. They are old. They are experienced. Ollie Gordon is your superstar. You got a 7th-year quarterback. As you start to dive into the schedule and start to put some W's and L's on it, what do you think of the key questions you've got for the Cowboys?
Can Alan Bowman play just a little bit better? His job was mostly just to hand off to Ollie Gordon. You mentioned the experience coming back. Not only are there a lot of seniors, I think a lot of them are super seniors along the offensive line. Like the combined starts is something out of, insane when you look at the offensive line up front. I went over on this one. It's not one of my favorite, and kind of was as I was going through these. We were texting a little bit before the show. I'm like, man, I got a lot of unders. This was one that I spotted. I just feel like experience comes into play. I think Ollie Gordon is one of the most dynamic backs coming with a offensive line and the history of Mike Gundy to be able to do this. I am worried about, Alan Bowman is even a Jag. I mean, if he could just get to be a Jag and maybe a Jag plus, I think they're in the mix to win the Big 12. So I'm a little bit more bullish on Oklahoma State. I'll go over. Plus the value is pretty good. It's not too crazy. So I'll take the over. I think they go 9-3.
Do you want to play a fun game about Alan Bowman?
Name.
Here are some of the players that were in the same recruiting class at quarterback as Alan Bowman, and see if you recognize any of them.
This is fun.
Trevor Lawrence, JT Daniels, Matt Corral, Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck's still around. Joe Milton, Cam Rising, Devin Leary, Spencer Petras, Michael Penix Jr. Let's keep going. Well, there's plenty more. Will Levis, Sam Hartman, Clayton Tune, Brock Purdy, Zach Wilson. These are all 2018 guys, and he's still in the freaking league.
Was that 2 quarterbacks that were in the playoffs last year? Yes. Right?
Yeah.
Purdy and Lawrence. Does that check out?
But it's just, he's been around a while, and it has not been what I would consider the most distinguished of careers. I mean, he also, remember, he had like a punctured lung he suffered. But that was crazy. But I mean, I don't know. This is one of probably the most experienced team in the Big 12. But last year, Bud tipped us to Oklahoma State to get to the win the Big 12 championship game. And a big reason for that was the schedule that they played. So they had a lot of success last year. And I feel like this win total is a little bit inflated because of that success. And I think that you come back this year and the schedule's a little bit different. Like you start with South Dakota State, which is a legit game you can lose. Like I understand, that they're Oklahoma State. They're one of the favorites in the Big 12, but South Dakota State's a really good freaking FCS team. They could win that game. You get Arkansas, which it's Arkansas, but it's also an SEC team. Then you get Tulsa on the road, whatever. But you've got Utah. Then you're on the road for Kansas State, you get West Virginia, and then you get the bye. And in the middle of that, you have your 4 easier opponents, I would say, on the schedule in BYU, Baylor, Arizona State, and TCU. Except of those 4 games, only Arizona State's at home. The other 3 are on the road. So you've got 3 road games in 4 weeks. That's probably going to have an impact. I'm on the under, and I'm pretty comfortably on the under. I think 7-5 is slightly more possible than 8-4, and the win total is at 8.5. So I'm going under.
Totally agree. If you are liking them to go over, you need to be considering some different types of bets, in my opinion.
It's
like
plus 700 to make the playoff.
Mhm.
That's an alternate way you
That-
want to take this if you want to get in on that.
Exactly. Which they've got to be kind of similar. What do they probably play? Plus 800, 850 to win the Big 12. I mean, there's going to be some kind of tolerance for them to get in as an at-large, but not much. I mean, they're a 9-point favorite over South Dakota State right now. I mean, that's like an implied 70% win, 70, 75, whatever. I'm trying to be a little more look at camera, not play with spreadsheets right now. I mean, how many games are they favored by double digits? Hosting Arizona State and at Tulsa?
Maybe.
I think Arkansas actually.
Texas Tech at home.
I don't know if they're favored by double digits in that game. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what if that's the case? What are we power rating Texas Tech? Like a team in like the 60s or 70s?
I don't know. You said Texas Tech's lying.
Well, I'm pretty sketch on Texas Tech if Morton's not healthy, but if he is healthy, which is the other thing. Like one of the reasons I want to bet high variance things with this team is I have no idea if Mike Gundy's going to give a damn about non-conference games. That always scares me. B, the back half of this schedule is extremely up in the air. I mean, Arizona State by that point could be a lot of different things, but it's hard to project. TCU, it's not like a Sonny Dykes team has ever really flopped down the stretch, right? Texas Tech, we have no idea if Morton can stay healthy. That would be game 11 for the Red Raiders. And then Colorado at the last game. Like Colorado could be absolutely in the thick of winning the Big 12. They could also have everybody quit with their eyes on the NFL because their culture is very different than a lot of teams, I think we could say. So I kind of want the higher variance stuff, but as far as picking this, I'm going to go under. And I think this team is better than last year's team.
Yeah, I've got Oklahoma State very much in the thick of the Big 12 title. The reason why I knew those prices is because I've been eyeing them, because I think that the separation between Oklahoma State and Utah and Kansas in the betting markets is further than the way that I see it. And that I see that Oklahoma State's chances of being able to make it to the Big 12 title game are much closer than what you've got there in the betting markets, where, Utah and Kansas State are very close to each other in a definitive tier above the Cowboys. I don't see it that way. I think that the general coaching and the reputation of a group that is old and has played together and understands exactly what they need to do, like that is a great chance for Gundy to be able to put together some good game plans and win those tough games. And for me, those tough games are Utah, at Kansas State, and at TCU. I am willing to break the rest of it towards Oklahoma State. I'm comfortably over the 8.5. Another example, kind of like Kansas State, where I think that that middle pack, that your TCUs, that your West Virginias, that your Texas Techs, and certainly your Baylors and below, I think there's enough of a gap that I feel comfortable given those. It's maybe not a double-digit gap like you're talking about, like double-digit favorites, but I do think it's probably a touchdown.
Oftentimes we'll point out there's better prices. FanDuel actually has the best price in the win the Big 12, plus 800.
Another thing to consider with Oklahoma State that, I mean, it's never fun to consider, but you kind of have to. Ollie Gordon weighs 211 pounds. Can he withstand another season of 23, 24 touches per game? Because he really was their offense last year. And if you're going to rely on him, because again, I don't have a ton of faith in Bowman in that passing attack. So if Gordon goes down with like an ankle sprain and misses a week or two or something, what is this team?
We are handing the reins over to Indiana's old backup running back, Trent Howland. That's the way it looks, at least at this point. All right, so we got 2 overs, 2 unders on the Cowboys. Lots more to get to, a half dozen more of the old guard, the OGs. So Kansas, wait, where are we going on the rundown? Come on here. Kansas, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, West Virginia, and Baylor. Win totals for all that and more. Next.
Have you heard of semaglutides? Ozempic, Mounjaro?
Hartman, this could be dangerous. Let's do it.
South Park, The End of Obesity. New exclusive event, now streaming.
exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, where we are asking the question,
How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
to Lance Leipold and the Kansas Jayhawks. Absolute breakthrough season in 2023, and the markets have adjusted. 8.5 is the win total at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more over at some plus money if you like it. Plus 138, the under at minus 170. We've got Jalen Daniels back, and you would be betting on his back being healthy or not when you make this win total. This is so be a fascinating choice for an actual investment, Bud. How are you feeling in terms of trying to throw down some hard-earned dollars on the Jayhawks one way or the other?
Yeah, I'm not showing a whole lot of value at this number. I mean, just to be clear, I really don't think that this is a good bet to make either way, because I lean under a good bit. But, it's like minus 170 is a pretty good amount to pay. They do have a absolute cakewalk of a schedule. I'm having a little bit of difficulty figuring out what number to use for home field advantage with them. Like, I think it should probably be 1 as opposed to like a 2 or 2.5 that you think you usually use, because they're playing a couple games in a tiny soccer stadium, and then they're playing a couple games at Arrowhead that I've in watching some Big 12 shows out there, they're pretty confident that the crowd will be a neutral site at best for Kansas. So that's a little bit of a weird thing. I mean, obviously it's awesome that Kansas is getting to build a new stadium and renovate theirs, whatever, because of the success that they've had under Lance and some other guys, but mostly just Lance. I'm going to go under if I have to at this number. I have concerns beyond the quarterback health, actually. And I think Lance Leipold is a great coach, but I mean, they lost like draft picks on defense. Kansas does not recruit at the level or transfer portal at a level that suggests to me that they replace NFL draft picks on defense with other NFL draft picks on defense. And I also have, some offensive line depth concerns. The starters might be okay, but I am worried about the depth there. So that's a lot of concerns for me. Give me the under.
Any Andy Kotelnicki concerns?
Well, no, because I'm a big Grimes fan. I thought what he did with Baylor was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I thought when he was at BYU, he was quite good as well. So, I a lot of respect for Kotelnicki and what he does, but Lance has been winning ball games for a long time. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and the way that I understand it is Lindenwood and UNLV will be in the soccer stadium, and then all the conference home games will be at Arrowhead.
Yes. If you're over or under, I don't think you should bet this either way, because I do think there is way too much of a wild card factor with Jalen Daniels, because we've seen with the injury history that he has, and I don't know if there's a Jason Bean to back him up and kind of uplift this offense if he goes down. So I'm on the over, but I approached it just strictly the only way I could look at it is if this team is full strength. But again, I'm not actually going to bet it. I think the schedule is I wouldn't call it easy, but I'd say it's pretty light for them considering what they could have gotten in the Big 12. As an Illinois fan, I wish this year's game had been at Kansas and last year's has been in Champaign, but whatever, take whatever breaks you can get. But in the non-con, you should beat Lindenwood, you should beat UNLV. At Illinois, you kind of ran over them last year, but like Bud was talking about, you've lost some key guys that were big players in that game. I don't know if you're going to be able to run over them again this year. At West Virginia is tough. At Arizona State, very winnable. At Kansas State, tough. At BYU, winnable. At Baylor, winnable. Colorado, Iowa State, Houston, and TCU are the rest of your home games, which you'll be playing at Arrowhead, which there really won't be the advantage of. But I think that kind of, hurts because a lot of those are winnable games. Still, I'm on the over, but I don't know, man. If Daniels goes down, this team could finish 6-6. If he stays healthy, they could be 10-2, 11-1.
If Daniels goes down, they could. Depending on obviously he's not. You would anticipate it wouldn't be right at the start of the season, but if they didn't have Daniels, this is like a 4-8 team.
Whoa, no, they can run the football. They
don't have Jason Bean anymore.
Yeah,
it's
still got Devin Neal.
Devin Neal's pretty good. He was 1,200 yard.
I love I think Arnold's a stud too, the receiver.
I think Devin Neal is very good, but I think a lot of running backs also benefit from the quarterback being somebody that the defenses have to worry about in the run game. And if you lose those guys and you don't have to worry as much about the quarterback, Devin Neal's not going to have giant lanes to run through.
But like to Bud's point, they were sneaky. Like late in the year, they played better defense. And I'm with you. Like they lost players that were important for that defense. But, it was Neal, it was Henshaw. Like they kind of had to change who they were a little bit, especially once those injuries started to set in. Sorry about that, Danny. Where you at with this one?
Shout out to Jordan pointed out Kobe Bryant at corner as well, one of their better players in the secondary. They do have some talent. I would love to go over, but I think I'd be betting with my heart, kind of rooting for Lance Leipold. I think he's phenomenal. I think what he's brought to that program and the fact that we're even having this conversation and debating this at this number is a testament to what he's done. You guys pretty much took everything that I was going to say, like total agreement on the under aspect of it. Jason Bean was a luxury last year. He almost thought about transferring. He was able to step in as somebody who had experience. If Jalen Daniels goes down, it's Cole Ballard, who played a little bit last year, son of Chris Ballard, the Colts GM. He looked a little bit overwhelmed. Now, granted, he will get a lot more reps this offseason. But, I mean, this is a player who was Big 12, predicted Big 12 Player of the Year. Not to mention, the other thing about the injury itself, it is a back issue. Like, those don't – I hope I'm wrong. Again, I'm not a doctor, but – I just worry that you could have issues, recurring issues, where maybe he doesn't play all 12 games. Maybe they have to rest him. I mean, there was a lot of conversation. Could he have played last year? And they had the luxury, again, of being able to shut him down. If they have to play him through that or they do have to shut him down again, there's way too much unknown there. So I'll go under.
Slightest of under as well.
Count them out.
Pivoting to the Iowa State Cyclones, where Rocco Becht returns after a strong 2023, certainly was encouraging. They've got an over-under win total of 7.5. And we got nice little split here, over at -115, under at -105 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. Pulled those prices last night. I assume they are close to the same. Danny, what are you doing with Matt Campbell's clones?
I love Rocco Becht, what he did last year. I worked with his dad, Anthony Becht, when he was a broadcaster before he's been a coach at the next level. I am under on this one. Not by much. When I went through the schedule, the battle for the Cyhawk game, I think they lose that one. I had them winning a lot of games, and then the back end, like at West Virginia, was a game I didn't feel real comfortable chalking that up for a young quarterback going on the road. UCF, I'm bullish on UCF. I had that one last year. I think it's a game they could struggle with at home. They play Utah on the back end, Kansas State, those last two games, even the last 3 out of the last 4 are really tough games to get. I'm on the under.
I'm on the over. I like Rocco Becht too, enough to take the over. I think he's a good fit for what they try to do on offense. I think Abu Sama is a very good running back for what they try to do on offense. And when I look at this schedule, like I hesitate to say there are gimmies, but I feel confident in them beating North Dakota, Arkansas State, Houston, Baylor, Texas Tech at home. Kansas is on the road, but as we talked about, that's later in the year. This could be a very banged up Kansas, Cincinnati at home. Like there are 6 games there where I feel like, all right, they should be winning those games. And then it just becomes, can you win 2 of the Iowa, West Virginia, UCF, Kansas, Utah, Kansas State games? And I think they can. I think they've shown an ability to do that. I think that they have one of the more, if not explosive quarterbacks in the league, one of the more reliable quarterbacks in the league. So I'm going to go over for the Cyclones.
I am right on market here at like 7.4. So I'm going to go over because I just picked a bunch of unders, but I don't really have any. I mean, otherwise, like the math ain't mathing, right? I don't have any conviction in betting over, obviously. 6.5 was the right time to bet this team over, which was like 10 weeks ago, if you wanted to. They did lose their OC. I'm not confident they've upgraded there with the new guy. We'll see how that works. But I thought it was pretty remarkable how this team stuck together last year with all the craziness going on. I mean, this is the team that lost to Ohio to start the year, right? And then I also like a couple things here. One, They get Iowa early in the season when Iowa could really not be clicking on offense. That's assuming they ever click, but more than likely that they don't click super early because it's a brand new install. They get Houston early, again, kind of same concept, brand new offense. Houston's running. That's probably something you'd rather play early rather than late, unless you believe Houston has terrible depth, which they could. And then Texas Tech and Kansas both have quarterback injury concerns. And I'm not saying like you're more injury prone than others, but I mean, Morton has a known thing that we haven't seen him throw yet. And we just talked about Daniels and a back injury, which has recurred over several seasons. So give me the over. I think there's a lot of paths to this, but man, they better be there. They better be getting close by Halloween, because the way they finish, Cincy at Utah, Kansas State is not easy.
Soaring over. Come on, let's go. Soaring. Only, let's see, what were my biggest differences? Utah, Oklahoma State. This is my third strongest over. Soaring over.
Wow.
Got it at 9-3. Come on now. All right, so I am going to give them UCF.
Analytics be chipping.
I did not like. I think that game in Ames seems like one that they could play on their terms rather than having to get stuck playing. Just chasing around the little laser pointer. Because Gus will sometimes make you start chasing the laser pointer around. Like I feel like in Ames, they'll be able to control that one. So North Dakota, Arkansas State. I like your point about Houston, the timing in the schedule. Baylor, UCF, Texas Tech, Cincinnati at home. I'm giving them 7. Giving them 7 games right there. I'll chalk up Utah as a loss, and then Kansas State, a little bit of a fringe one. So can you go get me the rest of the way? If I'm giving you 7 with at Iowa, at West Virginia, and at Kansas, you got to be a road warrior. But when I've got confidence in the experience that Becht was able to get, I think they can get to 8-4. So I think that Iowa State is that next pick for me. Like if we're going to throw them all together and say, all right, let's take some picks for teams that could wind up in the Big 12 title game. If we expect that a 6-3 or a 7-2 is going to be the conference record that gets you there, Iowa State is my next pick if we were drafting on a big board behind Oklahoma State. So, yeah, I really like the Cyclones. I like that our price here is, about split right down the middle, because I think we're talking about an 8-4, 9-3 potential, not an 8-4, 7-5 potential.
If there's a conference that you should not be betting exact win totals in, it is the Big 12, by the way. Like Kentucky kind of makes some sense to bet exact win totals because there's really only 4 games that are up for grabs. They're massive underdogs in 4 and huge favorites in 4. So there's only a certain number of outcomes, unless like lightning strikes. But this conference, I mean, the possible range of outcomes is so wide on almost all of these teams.
All right.
Count them up.
Well, we've been talking about them all daggum week. So, Bud, now we got to put a number to it. The Texas Tech Red Raiders over under win total of 7.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. Over at -115, under at -105. And we've mentioned Baron Morton's name over and over again. But what about the schedule and what about the rest of this team stands out to you as we're trying to project what's ahead for Joey McGuire's group?
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves the scouting they do. A lot of like the Texas, local Texas media loves them from Joey McGuire. And I don't have anything against Joey McGuire. I just, as a Florida guy, I kind of want to see it on the field. And so far, I have not seen it on the field under them. 2 years ago, they were extremely lucky to have the record they did. They were. I mean, just let's be honest, just extremely fortunate in close games. And that's not a skill that most teams have. Thankfully for Iowa State, otherwise they never win. So I am actually right on market though. 7.5 to me is roughly appropriate. I got him 7.3 right now. So that's slightly under. If Morton stays healthy, I mean, they should beat Abilene, right? They should beat North Texas. I think they should be favored at Washington State, not by a ton. And then you get Arizona State, you get Cincinnati, which I think at home you are a favorite in that ball game. You get Baylor, you get Colorado late, which I think I would rather have Colorado late than early. I don't know. Rock, paper, scissors me. If I win, I'm going under.
All right.
If you win, I'm going over.
Oh, no, we're going on shoot?
Yeah.
Okay. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay, you win.
All right. Going under. Yeah, I just no. I mean, if I'm 0.1 wins off the number, that there's no conviction.
I have a prediction for you.
All right.
Baron Morton will start the season at quarterback, but he won't finish it, regardless of injury status. I think they brought in a kid from West Georgia last year, Cameron Brown. They brought him in this offseason. He's currently the number 2 on the depth chart. He is a much more dynamic option. He's a much better runner. And I think you're going to see situations with him where Morton will start, but I think you're going to see packages with Brown early in the season. And I think as the year goes along, Brown will kind of wrestle that starting gig away because I just think he gives them a bit of a higher ceiling on offense. And this is all speculation and conjecture on my part. Call it a gut feeling. And I think he will be an improvement for them, especially in the red zone. So I'm going over, not with conviction, but just slightly over the 7.5. I look at the schedule and, man, like, it starts off with a very, very confidence building kind of path. Like,
Yes, it does. Pats on the back and
Yeah.
it just claps all the way through.
Yeah, you should beat Abilene. You could probably beat you could probably beat Wazoo on the road, North Texas at home, Arizona State at home, Cincinnati at home, and then you finally go on the road again to play Arizona in early October. You get your bye, and then you get Baylor at home. Like, this is a team that could be sitting there like 6-1, and then it just becomes, it's like, can we win 2 of our final 5 games? Maybe, yeah. Like, I just think this is a team that's going to be flying high going into their first bye, feeling really good about itself, and that could carry through the rest of the season where they can get to the over. I'm not actually betting it, but I'm taking it.
I am on the over, not by much. It's one of those even out plays too, because I had too many unders. I had to find one. You know, the ACC is trying to position itself, brand itself, the conference of quarterbacks. The Big 12 should brand itself conference of running backs because Taj Brooks is a really good running back, and it may not matter who's playing quarterback because they're going to be handing it off a lot. I also thought Baron Morton, you know, a lot of the injury stuff, and they cleared up. I mean, there was a little bit more clarification that he really could have played in the spring.
Yeah, he saw a specialist for a second opinion. Then they're easing him back in with a pitch count of 75 throws. As someone who plays fantasy baseball, or at least used to before I had kids, anytime I see like second opinion specialist and we're going to start him out on easing him back in on a pitch count, I immediately think Tommy John. Right now, obviously this is a shoulder, it's not an elbow, but
it's not great. Not great. But Tom's research on the backup makes me feel a little bit better about that as well. So, but I think Baron Morton, I think he's going to carry on some confidence from the big game against Cal in the bowl game. There's something that does for you an entire offseason, kind of being able to build on that. I'm going to assume he's healthy. I'm just going to go with that. But I have an over, not with a ton of confidence, but give it to Texas Tech.
I'm going to go under here. I've got this right at 7-5. I think the trip to Pullman will be tough. I think that Washington State is going to have some Super Bowl games. And I think that with a power conference team coming to town, that's it. You get a little bit more pep in your step in terms of trying to be able to make a statement, trying to be able to show where you stack up against the teams that got on the boat to power conference land when you were left on the island. At Arizona, at Iowa State, at Oklahoma State, those are all games that you probably wish were going to be at home in Lubbock rather than having to be road trips. And then, you know, Colorado, West Virginia, at TCU. There's just, I mean, Tom, you're spot on in terms of the beginning of the schedule, because it's going to be like you go to sports camp at the church or sports camp at the school, right? One of them, they make you feel real good about yourself. The other one, they're trying to find out who they're going to recruit in a little bit. And it was that's going to be like a real confidence building start. But ultimately, I see the Red Raiders finishing at 7-5, and as just sort of where I've got them standing in terms of the overall pecking order in the Big 12. So Texas Tech going to be an under for me. But you got something?
I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of these teams where the staff is like a media darling staff. You know, like there's some kind of, I've never met the staff, but like there's some kind of disconnect where like all the media friends I have love these guys, but you know, like the results just don't show.
The Shane Beamer rule.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Hey, great guy. You ever talk to Joey? Great guy. You know, just
Which brings up, why isn't every coach that way with the media? Because a lot of times it actually gets you an extra year or 2 years. Like it buys you time because the articles aren't written. This guy's got to go. Like,
Napier's that way this year. He wasn't the first 2 years.
He is awful. Everybody is saying it's a renewed, attitude.
Yeah,
they're great.
There's
Positive mojo coming out there.
I don't know Joey. I've never met Joey, so I can't actually speak to it. But I will say my gut tells me Texas really loves Texas. People from Texas really love people from Texas. And if you're from Texas and you love Texas, somebody else from Texas who loves Texas is going to love you.
Well, and it's he came up from it's his relationship with the high school coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more important in Texas than high school football and the interconnectedness of all those clinics and the way that all that builds out? There's certainly an infrastructure to supporting the machine without a doubt. Coming up on the other side, turning our attention to TCU, West Virginia, and a big season for Dave Aranda at Baylor. Can he coach himself off the hot seat? We'll get into that and more next.
Never before seen matches and new rivalries unlocked. Trust me, we're just getting started. The Summer Cup is here. Let these games begin.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Bud, it's somebody in the tailgate caught that we've got two second half of the season Sonny Dyke shots in the week. So I'm going to let you take lead off here with TCU. How do you see the schedule playing out for the Horned Frogs?
Yeah. So first of all, I do like this team quite a bit. And I have this priced, this is boring, exactly on market.
At 7.5, where you can get it 7.5.
Well, it's minus 150 to the under. So I mean,
right.
Like if we discount 70 cents for a win, that comes out to like 6.8 ish. So
what is that? How it works?
Yeah, but half win is roughly 70 cents, depending on the distribution of games, right? Like if you have a whole bunch of games that are coin flips, it will price a little bit differently than if you have a bunch of games that are blowouts. And like if you're Kentucky versus a Big 12 team, you should be pricing it differently. That's all I'm going to say on that. I'm going to take over here, actually, because I get plus money to the over. I kind of like the variance there. I think they like Josh Hoover. If you watched our summer school, they were also very happy with how the backup Ken Seals ran the offense, which I think is an important note, maybe use later. I actually like this Cam Cook running back an awful lot. I've been drafting quite a bit of him in college fantasy. And McAllister at Boise was a guy who I thought won 50-50 balls extremely well. And I mean, I kind of like some of the pickups they got on the O-line. I mean, the getting Bless Harris from FSU was one that I think FSU really would have liked to keep had they had any confidence he would stay healthy. And also, like, can you really pay to keep a third offensive tackle when well-moneyed teams like TCU can pay full freight a starter rate? So defensively, it's hard for them to be worse. Like things kind of fell apart last year, and also with some of the quarterback injury stuff. I'm glad they're no longer messing around with Chandler Morris because I just don't understand why teams like him. I don't. So give me the over. I think there are a lot of opportunities here to do some things. At Stanford, it scares the heck out of me, by the way. Like that's one that scares me. I think this team could win the conference too.
Whoa!
They're in the conversation. Like they shouldn't be favored to do so, but they are. If you play like the could win, can't win game, they're decidedly in the could win side of things.
From at Stanford could be dangerous to could win the conference.
Big 12,
I guess
baby.
only in the Big 12.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
only the Big 12 you can make that
It's a
jump.
real possibility. No team in the Big 12 is a top 20 caliber team.
Nothing wrong with losing to an ACC school.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah. Like,
where's Chandler Morris from? Texas.
Texas.
Same thing applies to the coaches, to the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Liking him. But
I'm on
the
regional title.
Yes, that's right. I'm on the under on this one, not by a ton. Again, all of these are probably my least confident conference, just picking these. I have them splitting with the ACC juggernauts, Stanford and SMU, even though they did win the game last year, the battle for the Iron Skillet. I'm going to give it to SMU, where it's back at their place this year, expanded stadium. I still think this team is sort of figuring out things with a portal. There's a lot of portal movement on this, which is totally normal. It's how they had so much success during the championship run to the title game. We talked a lot about their coaches. I still just when I went through the schedule, I just couldn't chalk up enough dubs with confidence to say, all right, I feel really good about them getting some of those 50-50 ones. So even that some of the W's I was writing up there, I was like, all right, I'll lean this way. I just didn't have enough confidence there, so I'll go under.
I am under, and I feel damn good about it. I think that, you mentioned, Bud, they got Bless Harris on the offensive line from Florida State, but you also mentioned there's injury concerns there. But my bigger concern is he's just one of the guys they got. Like 4/5 of their offensive line right now projects to be an incoming transfer. And it's not about the talent level of the guys they got. It's just offensive lines need time and reps to figure it out. Like you see offensive lines with a lot of newcomers struggle early in the year. And I am anticipating TCU's offensive line to struggle early in the year. So that at Stanford on the road, problematic. Long Island, you're going to win, but you get UCF, you're at SMU, then you're at Kansas, and then you get Houston at home, like in early October before your first bye. So, but it might be before that bye until that offensive line really figures things out. But then your first game back is at Utah, which they're not going to win. You get Texas Tech at Baylor, Oklahoma State at home, Arizona at Cincinnati. I think this is a 6-6 team. And if the total is what, 8.5 or 7.5, 7.5, yeah, I think they're 6-6, closer to 6-6 than 7-5. So I feel pretty damn good about this under.
That wasn't fair, Bud, for me to point that out as though it was hilarious. When I mentioned on Monday's show, I think I called them old toss-up ass TCU because I'm willing to give them 2 W's. I'm willing to give them 2 L's. And I have 8 toss-ups on this schedule. And some of that is my own inability to get a grasp on what it's going to look like with this influx of transfer talent, where I can imagine what it is. Josh Hoover maybe showed a little bit of promise. I know they're encouraged by him, but he also showed some bad play. He was thrown into the fire, admittedly, but he showed you a floor that should be somewhat concerning. I am under based on that, even acknowledging that we've got a wide variance of outcomes. But for me, that variance of outcomes is anywhere from 3-9 to 9-3. And so at 7.5, I think I'm going to split the difference on that one. And, at Utah, Oklahoma State are the only L's that I see. I gave them Stanford and Long Island, but I think that UCF, SMU, Kansas, Houston, Texas Tech, Baylor, Arizona, and Cincinnati, who knows? So I have this one is the biggest fascination for me, just because there's a lot that I don't have a good grip on. And kind of like we were talking about with Texas Tech earlier, I believe also in the same conversation on Monday, what they'd be going to end up being is then going to have a domino effect on so many other squads in terms of, are you going to finish like 3rd in the conference, or in the mix to make the Big 12 title game, or are you fighting for a bowl game at the end of the season? TCU, one of those mystery teams, I think that is kind of tough to place.
Yeah. I mean, they all kind of are like, they're all sort of the same rough amount of talent teams in this league. That's what makes this league so close, because of the exciting games. But I don't think there's a lot of teams that out talent each other in this league.
How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
After Neil Brown came roaring off the hot seat to go and find himself a statement season. Well, now West Virginia's back, and they've got an under win total of 6.5. Over -128, under +104 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. Tom, how did the Mountaineers respond in their refractory period?
Oh, wasn't ready for that. The Mountaineers won 9 games last year. Let's find the most impressive one. Duquesne, Pitt, Texas Tech.
They're going to be mad at you, but you're right.
At TCU, at UCF, BYU, Cincinnati, at Baylor, or a Tar Heel team in a bowl game that didn't have Drake May or a bunch of good players. So, I mean, there's no shame in it, but they took advantage of a advantageous schedule last season, and that's something you need to do. But because of that, I really don't know what to make of this team heading into 2024. I think Green is a pretty solid option at QB, if not a great one. But like, this schedule doesn't seem as advantageous, although at the same time, it doesn't seem like a monster. I am very slightly to the over, but my level of confidence in it is somewhere between a 1.5 and a 2.5 win total.
Danny?
You know what winning does, no matter who you win against?
Let's go.
It breeds confidence. It
That's right.
breeds belief. You know what else I like a lot? You mentioned him. Garrett Green. I don't think he's playing in the NFL any day. I'm not going to make any guarantees. But my man takes care of the football. He's scrappy. He had 3 games. He went over 100 yards rushing. I did watch a little. Now, I might be swayed because I saw a little workout video of him. I think it was QB Country was the crew he was working with, one of the quarterback gurus that's out there. Throwing motion looked pretty clean. I do think Neil Brown finally got some positive mojo going, and I think it'll carry. I think Morgantown will be that much tougher to play in. Some of their tougher games at home, some of those tough-up games that they need to get one of those, probably an upset in one of them. I think they get it. So I'm going to go over.
I'm going to go under ever so slightly. Like not something that I'm rushing to the window to bet, but a lot of my argument was Tom's. Like what really was this team last year? You know, I don't really care about the bowl game. So if you strip out the bowl game, they were not a top 40 power rated team for me. They were somewhere, 45, 50-ish, just a decent football team. Now there are definitely some ways in which they go over. And I think those ways are some of the transfers they took at DB are more obvious answers than they were in the spring. And somebody emerges at receiver. I do think that teams, now there's knowing and stopping are two different things, but I think now they kind of understand what the Mountaineers want to do with Green. They do not trust him to read a defense at all. They don't trust him to throw over the middle of the field, at least last year. So they really just went to an NBA style dunks and threes only type approach. It's like, cool, run around, screens, bombs, and that's it. And he's extremely mobile, like sack rate under 2% per drop back. So that's awesome. It kind of keeps drives alive and it keeps the chains moving. But there are some tricky spots here. How many games do you guys think they are favored by more than a touchdown? Because I think it's 2. Albany and Baylor. And they're double digits to Penn State at home, which may be a little steep, but who knows?
What do you do for backyard brawl?
At Pitt?
Yeah.
Oh, in that famous home field advantage?
I mean,
Throw out
Pitt's
the
going to
record
start
book.
Yarnell, I believe, not the Holstein kid. So that makes me like Pitt more, personally. If they were starting Holstein, I was going to fade the heck out of him because I don't think he can play. I mean, at Pitt, like, what are we using for home field there? 2? 1.5?
1.75.
That implies they're 10 points better than Pitt on a neutral.
I think West Virginia will bring a ton of fans to the Big Mustard Bottle, and that thing is going to be a neutral site.
Yeah, but that means like a bottom 90 team power rated wise, unless you think West Virginia is like a legit top 20 team. To me, like the compression, I don't know. I'm going under slightly. It's not something I love betting, but I just don't see enough guaranteed wins here for them.
I mean, we're talking about the Big 12, no guaranteed wins. I am slightly to the over, but Danny, here's what I've circled. Tell me if you agree. It's that UCF, Kansas, Iowa State, like that run right there. You've got those games at home. Can you take advantage of those and flip those into wins? That to me is the path where you're going to, like, it doesn't even need to be an upset of Penn State. Maybe it is throw Kansas State in there as well, but some of the home road splits, I think, give some opportunities for West Virginia to take advantage of what I do think is one of the better home field advantages in the Big 12. So I am very, very slightly to the over.
How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
It's an important question. It's a very important question for Dave Aranda and the Baylor Bears. Over under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more of 5.5. Over -105, under -115, and it's simple. I mean, if you don't make it to a bowl game, probably not back for 2025. I think there could be extenuating circumstances. It's July 31st. A lot can go right or wrong between now and then, but it does feel like you are making a call on the future of the program. Tom, you think that the Bears are bowling in 2024?
No. I am very comfortable on the under here. I mean, this is one of those situations where you can't just factor in the abilities to win the games. You have to factor in the mental state of the team. And you look at the early schedule here. You get Tarleton State, which they're going to win, but your first real game is on the road against Utah. Very skeptical you're going to win that game. You come home against Air Force. You're going to be favored, maybe, but that's still going to be a tough game. Then you're on the road for Colorado, BYU at home, and then you're on the road for Iowa State. This is all before the first bye. There is a very real chance this team is 2-4 going into that bye. And is that when you pull the trigger on Aranda and you move to an interim and then you finish the back half of the season, which has some winnable games and has some tough games, but you're doing it under an interim coach, and a lot of guys are trying to figure out what they're going to be doing next year and if they're going to be sticking around. The buy-in might fade. I think that the floor can drop out on this team in mid-October and they just completely bottom out. And I'm kind of betting on that with this. That's when I was going through my simulations. That's the path I took. So I've got them finishing about 4-8.
I get 5 and 7 like every time I run my sim. So like for me, that's an under. It's not a huge edge, obviously, but like, you know, you're right, Tom. Some of their more in theory winnable games may come after they've quit. Like we've discussed, they get both Texas Tech and Kansas, who are the two quarterback injury concerned teams that I would have in this league. But you know, that Kansas game is the last game of the season at Houston. I mean, if Aranda is fired early, like that's a game you could easily see them quitting. And I think they're only favored there by maybe somewhere between like 1 and 3 points. Like you're not making Baylor, 10 over Houston on a neutral site. So, I think under slightly here. I actually kind of like Daquan Finn.
Yeah, I love Daquan Finn.
I don't know how much better is this defense really. They didn't get a lot of transfers. They're banking on guys. I mean, they took some in the secondary, but
I respect that Aranda's taking control. He's saying like, I'm going to coach the linebackers. I'm going to be the play caller. Like he is going down with the ship, or he's going to fix it, which again, I've got some respect for, but from the personnel perspective, you scan up and down what the projected depth chart is going to look like. And it's tough for me to see where the changes are going to come from performance on the field, even if changes are happening structurally off the field and schematically.
What were the odds on the coaching hot seat? Where was Aranda? Was he 2? Or was he? Because I know Pittman was up there.
Napier and Pittman were near the top.
1, 2.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm on the under as well. I just worry about the culture, about where this team is. And I do agree. I thought I had them starting off 1 and 3. And then when I saw that, I was like, uh-oh, here we go. Like, is this the type of locker room that's going to battle back from that type of start to the season? Then they have some of their tougher road games, even after that. So I had them under pretty comfortably too.
Which college football playoff contender who had a terrible defense in 2024? Where is Dave Aranda coaching as a defensive coordinator next year? Like, does LSU suck on defense again and Aranda returns to Baton Rouge to fix the problem? I mean, that is the future I see. I think the only other possible outcome is Aranda is this year's Neil Brown, in which last year at this time we'd fired Neil Brown, but then they took advantage of that advantageous schedule and Neil's still there. So maybe that happens.
Do y'all remember the Thunderdome game actually did come down to like dueling Hail Marys?
Yes.
When Houston played West Virginia and it was Holgorsen and Neil Brown and coaching futures were hanging in the balance. I mean, just incredible theater. I'm not sure. I don't think Iowa State has that kind of game both ways, but it does feel like that is a spot, as you mentioned, Tom, going in. Because look, at Utah is a loss. At Colorado could be.
Yeah.
There'll be dogs to Colorado.
Yeah. I had that like it's an automatic loss.
Yeah. It's going to be, I am on the under too. I've got this one closer to 4 and 8, 5 and 7. If it happens, it's going to be thanks to our boy, Jake Spavital. Spavs boys. I mean, you pick up Jake Spavital, you get Daquan Richardson. Finn. You can tell me that it ends up working out. Michael Trigg coming in too. So there's a good player, but I'm not going to be out there flying the big BU flag to say that this is going to be another West Virginia story. So give me the under as well. Any other thoughts on Baylor? How about thoughts on a big old bag of mail? Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We've been rolling out these win totals from the Big 12. Maybe you've got some reaction. Maybe you are already looking ahead to next week when we'll start to tackle the Atlantic Coast Conference. Maybe some continued thoughts from media days. We got some questions where you've given us a 5-star review, and in that review, you put your mailbag question. We throw it in the big old bag of mail, tackle it in a future mailbag episode. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Go U.S. women's volleyball team.
Let's go.